Right then, biggest question, the only question really,
Yeah.
why have a bike fit?
Well, there's a number of reasons. So the first thing is for comfort. So no matter what level you're at, you have to be comfortable. So even if you're a professional rider or somebody that just rides to the shops and back, if you're not comfortable, you're not going to ride your bike, and it really does really spoils your enjoyment of just riding your bike. The second thing is performance. You can dramatically, in some cases, increase performance of an individual if they can extend their leg correctly or within certain parameters. And the third thing is to prevent injury from that. And again, so all those things go to increasing your enjoyment of riding the bike.
And when you're talking about increasing performance, that's all relative to the person who's riding the bike, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, you could be somebody who's just enjoys going out just for fitness, for instance. Don't even have to be a racer, but you're always constantly challenging yourself. Or most people are always constantly challenging themselves. So sometimes it's just about being the best that you can be as an individual. Again, you could be a real novice, really starting out, but if you're not comfortable on your bike, you're not going to enjoy it, and that's what it comes down to.
And in terms of the sort of prevention of injury or the improvement of injury, how does your process and your experience feed into that? Because everybody that's ever ridden a bike will have either had saddle sore,
Yep.
or got pain in their arms,
Yep.
shoulders,
I thought you were
neck.
going to say something else.
Well, there's that as well. That's related directly to the saddle sore. But neck, arms, knees,
Yes.
ankles, numb feet.
Yeah.
All those sorts of
Hot
things.
foot you can
Hot
get.
foot, yes.
So-
How does bike fit help address those sorts of issues?
Well, I mean, the first thing is the interpretation of data. That's the most important thing. The interpretation of data is the most important thing. So actually getting somebody and visualising, actually looking at the individual, because a lot of bike fitters, what they do is they'll sit behind a computer screen, they'll have dots on an individual's legs, and they'll do a run, and the computer will tell that person where they need to be based on an algorithm. What I do is that I do take some of that on board, but the difference is I'm looking at the interaction between the person and the bike itself, and that's come from 30 years of experience, really. I mean, there's a number of different things. So once you support the feet, for instance, a lot of saddle issues go. So that's the first thing. So if you imagine that you've got a saddle, and then you've got your pedals here and your handlebars here, the most amount of force obviously needs to go onto the feet, so onto the pedals themselves. The second amount of force needs to go on the saddle, and then the third amount, it's just the lightest amount realistically needs to go on the handlebars. Now, as soon as you support the feet, if you imagine that you're sort of pushing on the feet, then it takes the weight off the saddle. So that's an example, but it's about balancing all of these three parameters out so that you get the most optimal, comfortable ride for somebody.
So when you've taken all that into account, it's probably the easiest way to look at a really good bike fit is simply to get you enjoying riding your bike more.
Yeah, absolutely. And you will feel the difference. I mean, virtually everyone that comes to see me says, I can't believe it, that feels like a new bike, or the bike feels so different and so much more comfortable. It just feels right. Once you get the bike in the right position, it just feels right.
Would you agree that you're not getting the best out of the bike if you don't fit it correctly?
It always amazes me that people spend an absolute fortune on saddles, handlebars, wheels, to get performance, and yet they don't spend any money on themselves. And the bike's already there. So all you've got to do is, potentially move the saddle into a correct position, either up, down, or forwards and backwards. So, it makes such a difference to an individual. And, you can spend sort of £2,000 on components to make it as light as possible. but the bike still won't fit you any better. The most important thing is the fit, bar none. You know, you can have two bikes. One is technically better performing than the other based on wind tunnel testing and all the other stuff that goes with it.
Yeah.
But if it's the wrong size for you,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter how aerodynamic or how amazing that particular bike is. It doesn't fit you. It's not going to perform, and you're not going to perform. I see it a lot. You know, I see it. I mean, one of the classic examples is the integrated handlebar. Somebody spent £500-600 on a handlebar stem, and you move the saddle to get them in the correct position on the saddle, and it throws the whole of the front end out, and you have to sort of tiptoe around them and think it's a little bit awkward. But those handlebars that make your bike really aerodynamic
And look amazing.
and they look amazing, they've slightly thrown you out. You know, sometimes we get a handlebar stem that's integrated, get them in the right position on the saddle, and it throws them out at the front, so we have to sort of almost move them or suggest that they buy a different set of handlebars, which is quite a difficult conversation to have sometimes.
Yeah, sorry, you're going to have to eBay those and
Yeah, but I mean, there's also manufacturers have got a lot to answer for, because if you take aerodynamics into consideration as an example, I know we talked about the whole thing, but I do get a lot of people talk about aerodynamics. A manufacturer will say that a bike is 5% more aerodynamic than it was the previous year, and yes, it is. Without the rider on. So when you've got, so the way that it's marketed is that a bike is 5 or 7% more aerodynamic, and they put this integrated handlebar stem on, and yes, it is, absolutely, until you put
what's sitting behind those bars is
That's right. So obviously we account as human beings as, it's the largest proportion of aerodynamics. So, you've got a really aerodynamic bike and you're in the wrong position. It will absolutely transform your riding, and I still don't understand why. I mean, particularly old school riders, they've been riding for 30 or 40 years, have never ever had a bike fit. It's almost, I suppose, in a way. I mean, I was taught how to fit bikes way back 30 years ago when I used to work for 2 different frame builders, and so the way that we set them up is fundamentally the same, but we now incorporate a lot more technology and we have a lot more information at our hands. But fundamentally, it hasn't drastically changed for the basic position. But old school riders from 30 years ago are still using the numbers that they had, back when they were riding in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s. They still know their saddle height, reach, and it's based on elbow to handlebars and this old style sort of way of doing things. But now we take it to another level, absolute another level, and even subtle differences like 1 or 2 millimeters fore and aft can engage a different muscle group, crank length, all these different things that we never used to really pay much attention to has all changed. If you came and saw me, you will have an increase in performance, you'll have an increase in comfort, and you're likely to never get injured, and your enjoyment of the bike will be massively improved. And I make really good cup of tea, and there's always cake here. So
I can vouch for the cake.
Thank you. Well, what about me tea?